All right. Wife's in bed. Kids off visiting grandparents for the weekend. I'm hyped up on probably too much caffeine. And I got lots of stuff to talk about. You want? I could sit here. We could talk all night, right? So, what you doing? I'm just kidding. It is Saturday, April 23rd, 2016.
This is not a test.
This is the Wrestling News Experience. After Dark. It's been a busy week. Before we get started, I should remind you that, of course, if you happen to be listening live, there is a live chat feature on your player on Spreaker.com. You can come and talk to us live. By say us, I mean me. I'm here all night. Well, at least as long as the show is on. Of course, if you happen to not listen live, you still want to contribute, we have the TWNE After Dark Facebook page, and you can follow me on Twitter at Dave the Camel. This podcast is part of the Wrestling to the Max podcast network. Which you can also follow on Facebook. It's Wrestling numeral 2, the Max. And that's the only way I know how to find it. But it's also this podcast available on iTunes and Stitcher if you happen to be one of those people who likes those things. And who isn't. So, another busy week. Another busy week in wrestling. We're just over a week away from another pay-per-view. Of course, but we'll talk about that one next week because that'll be the night before the pay-per-view. And we've already said about how it's looking pretty good. But of course, we have to start off tonight with the tragic death of Chyna at the age of 45. No official report on the cause of death, but of course she was discovered, and it was, and you don't die at 45 from natural causes usually. I think we'd have to place this death under incredibly sad, incredibly tragic, but also expected. I know that sounds callous, and it is. I think my response at hearing the news was both shock but not surprise, as in she had basically stayed under the radar, as far as I know, for at least a little while. So, you'd stop whatever. When you hear about it, you're like, sadly, that makes sense. Ironically, her tragic death even gets overshadowed because Prince died the next day. So she just could not catch a break, and I'm being callous. I know I am. Feel free to hate me for saying stuff like that, but sometimes that's how we react. Of course, now the talk turns to the fact that Chyna deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, and now that she's dead, I guess it's possible that could happen because she won't embarrass WWE anymore. Never mind that the WWE Hall of Fame contains at least one accused murderer, several racists, Donald Trump, a current porn star, and several other people who I don't feel like naming. You can fill in the blanks yourself. I'm not going to do it for you. Obviously, the reason she's not in the Hall of Fame is because she is the ex-girlfriend of Triple H, who is, married to Stephanie and in charge of the company now, and that would have been awkward for everyone. Also, her post-WWE career has not been stellar, and not just the porn, but also the fact that she had a very public problem with substance abuse and public displays of embarrassment. And would you want someone like that if you were WWE at your Hall of Fame ceremony? That said, obviously, if we go on credentials, almost anyone can get in the Hall of Fame, but Chyna does deserve to be so. Uh, Aside from being one of the founding members of D-Generation X, she's the first and only woman to hold the Intercontinental Championship. She was the first woman to participate in the Royal Rumble and the King of the Ring tournament, and she eliminated someone in the Royal Rumble. First woman to do that. She was a cornerstone of the revived Women's Championship in 2000, before abruptly leaving. She wrestled men and defeated men as if she was an equal. And yes, some of that came to the fact that she was a larger woman with a bodybuilder physique and a different physical specimen than even the women that wrestle today. I don't think anyone's going to say that Sasha Banks will be wrestling Roman Reigns on an even keel even today. But back then, it was a huge accomplishment. I don't think there's by any standard, she should be in the Hall of Fame. But ironically, while her death may open it up the possibility once more, it also means it will probably be delayed significantly because they don't like to induct too many dead people at a single time. And that's callous, but at the same time, you're doing it. I keep saying callous today. I don't know. It's my word of the day, I guess. But it's harsh, but I understand where they're coming from. You don't want to have a Hall of Fame ceremony that's full of families and friends of dead people. You want to have a Hall of Fame ceremony where the speeches are given by live wrestlers wherever possible. Even this year, where half the Freebirds are dead, and the Big Boss Man, it was somewhat uncomfortable enough that way. But I can understand not wanting to do multiple deceased wrestlers at the same time, because not only is it are the speeches less interesting, just from a TV perspective, but also it does shine the light on the fact that a lot of wrestlers passed away at a young age, and I can understand WWE not wanting to shine that light. I think it'll happen one day. And people will complain that it was given lip service, or that Triple H and Stephanie were horrible people who are just doing it now that she's not dead to tell her side of the story, and maybe that's partially true. Certainly, her relationship with Triple H was common knowledge, and the fact that Triple H is now with Stephanie is common knowledge, and obviously breakups suck. I'm not saying that Triple H and Stephanie McMahon are blameless in Chyna's problems, but at the same time, she did have significant issues beyond that. You cannot blame them for a decade and a half of substance abuse issues. You really can't. Breakups suck, and breakups can hurt, and trust me, I know. But you can't put it all on them. And were the Twitter the tweets that came out, were they corporate sympathy tweets and not really that personal? Maybe. Who can say? Who knows the intent? Maybe Triple H is friends with people who haven't exactly been nice to him in the past. The New Age Outlaws went to TNA and made fun of him for weeks at one point. And they're road agents for WWE. Things can be forgiven. And perhaps part of it is motivated by the fact that now he will never get that chance to reconcile. Who knows? We don't know. It's a tragic situation. It's obviously one that, in retrospect, lots of people could say, "Oh, we saw that coming," and we've seen it coming for years. And does that make us kind of unfeeling? But you can't help somebody who doesn't want to be helped. As I was doing research on her for work, for something I did, and I did learn some things about her the last few years. She actually may have turned her life around a bit. She was apparently in Japan teaching English for 3 years, and she was coming back. And there's a documentary about her being made. That the trailer was supposed to drop next month. I assume that will still happen, and we'll definitely get that documentary, and it might be an interesting look. We'll never get the full story, and we'll never, we all want it wrapped up neat in a bow. Sometimes we don't get it, and this is going to be one of those times. So it's simply a tragedy, and it's unfortunate, and it seems like 2016 is not going to be any kinder to us than 2015 was in terms of people dying well before their time. You just got to roll with the punches, I guess. Now that I've said that, watch what happens on Monday. So we'll move on from that unfortunate topic. We have some other news we have to talk about. Other big news, of course, is that on Thursday night at a live event in Lowell, Massachusetts, Samoa Joe defeated Finn Balor to win the NXT Championship. This happens just after Balor set the record for longest reigning NXT champion, which he took from Neville. And granted, it's interesting to see how many long NXT title reigns they had, because Neville took that from Bo Dallas, which was over 200 days, and it says something about the title that it's been held for a long time. And the shortest reign was because Sami Zayn got his ass kicked by Kevin Owens. And then Owens was relatively short because he got up to the main roster so fast. And even his was at least 3 months. Possibly longer, probably longer. I don't remember. So yeah, Joe is now the NXT champion. Something that, while we did not see it coming, and obviously we didn't see it coming, it was there were signs. Balor was not on any of the episodes of NXT taped after WrestleMania, which I believe went up to this week or next week. I can't remember. And Joe was possibly only on the one that aired this week. On this week's NXT, they heavily promoted the match that was happening in Lowell, which isn't like, usually they promote the fact that house shows exist, but directly promoting the fact that he was getting a title match in Lowell, Massachusetts, suggested something was up. Now, obviously, and of course Finn is doing his best to play along. Obviously, the speculation has arisen that Finn Balor will be on the main roster by this Monday at the earliest, and probably by the Monday after Payback at the latest. And despite what stories I may have seen and what Meltzer may have said, I still think that's the case. I think that you don't take the title off Finn Balor at a house show. You don't take him off the tapings for that month. You don't debut two of his best friends in a main event angle if he's not going to make it to the main roster. People saying, well, why didn't they just have Joe win at TakeOver? Is because they wanted Balor to take the record for longest reigning NXT champion. And the other thing is, you take it off Balor at a house show, it suggests that that whatever he's going to do, it won't be in a way that he can come back to NXT and lose the title at a taping. Although the match is supposed to air on NXT this week, but he won't be able to come back and run an angle on NXT. That's what it suggests to me, and more than anything else, that suggests that he's not coming back to NXT anytime soon, which is good, because it adds intrigue to an already stacked Payback card. Balor deserves to be on the main roster in whatever form that comes. And there's been a lot of backlash lately against Balor for having a lack of character in NXT, but perhaps the thing is that his character is more suited to the general audience than the admittedly picky NXT audience. We've not picky so much as spoiled, as we've had really good stuff, and we're going to continue to have really good stuff going forward. And Baylor, although the Demon was kind of cool and will work wonders on the main roster, Baylor outside the Demon was kind of a generic babyface, and that's true. And he doesn't cut the best promo in the world. And that's why, it's not going to happen, but I kind of had a thought, what if they want him to be the Demon all the time? That's not going to happen. But that would be a way to get around the fact that his promos aren't very good. But there's so many options, and I think that it's not so much that Baylor may come in and Baylor Club may be a real thing. It's the number of ways in which it could be a thing. Are they good guys? Are they bad guys? Are they aligned with Roman Reigns? Are they aligned with the Authority? Are they aligned with AJ Styles? Are they on their own? Could we be seeing a New World Order? And since Bullet Club was originally created as an homage to the New World Order, that's entirely possible. Can WWE screw this up massively? Of course they can. Do we hope they don't? Also, of course we do. As much as WrestleMania was a disappointment at this point, only weeks later, I'm sitting here going, I can't wait to see what happens because I am completely intrigued in what's going to go on here. The events of the next two Raws and Payback could change could literally, and I'm not trying to be hyperbolic here, could literally change the direction of the company. Now, of course, the TV ratings have been down because of things like the NBA playoffs and just because they're down, because the business is continuing to be down, and who knew that Roman Reigns wouldn't be a big draw on top? Everybody. And 3-hour Raws are too long, and that's showing in the ratings. But at the same time, as I've said before, ratings don't change on a dime. If this angle is good and this angle changes things and this angle is something that fans want to see, ratings will go back up, even for 3-hour Raws. I think at this point, because what I saw for the ratings this week was that they stayed about the same for the first 2 hours and they dropped right off for the third hour. The Golden State Warriors game, as my understanding, started at 10 o'clock Eastern that night. It's hard to blame somebody for wanting to go see that. And also, the main event, the world title angle, ran the start of the second hour. Which means that not that the things that happened in the third hour weren't important, but when you run your world title angle at the start of the second hour, you're going to see people tune out. It's just the way it is. And hopefully, hopefully the fact that the ratings aren't suddenly skyrocketing to new heights because they weren't going to, doesn't cause somebody in WWE to hit a panic button and say, nope, we were wrong. No AJ Styles, no Kevin Owens, no Sami Zayn, no that stuff, none of that. We have to go back and we have to get John Cena back here 3 months ahead of schedule because I don't know why. Because he could suddenly reverse all this. No. Honestly, if they brought John Cena back early, I think it would just make it worse because there's nothing John Cena can do short of being the leader of Bullet Club that would make people say, boy, I need to tune in and watch what he does again. And I'm sorry. I thought that John Cena could come back and save everything, but he can't. John Cena could maybe come back and put everything back into treading water mode. But John Cena coming back right now would just be, oh, look, John Cena's back. And who's he going to beat this week? And that, I don't see it as a good plan. I'm not saying it's what's going to happen. But I'm saying that if WWE panics over low ratings right now, they're never going to get out of that rut of low ratings. Because you're going to have to sit there and accept that there's going to be a dip while you build up these new stars. But if you build up these new stars, you might start to go back up again. And possibly the fact that the ratings after WrestleMania while higher than the normal ratings, we're still down from last year. Maybe it a sign that we actually have to change things, and we have to take the loss now because they're still making money, but they're taking ratings hits in an effort to raise them in the future. And there's no better time because John Cena's not here, because Randy Orton's not here, because there is nobody else than what we have, and what we have is some good wrestlers. And we might as well give them the spotlight. It's hard to say. Does Cesaro get the chances that he's getting right now if John Cena's back? But probably not, because Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn and AJ Styles don't get the chances that they're getting right now if John Cena and Randy Orton and all those guys are back. Because those guys would be on top, and Owens and Zayn and Styles would be at the Intercontinental title level, and where does that leave Cesaro? Back where he was before he got hurt. So it's the fact that they're going with this is a promising sign, and the fact that they've decided, no, we don't need to rush John Cena back, and no, we don't need to rush all these injured guys back. We can take it easy and maybe try to build something new is a promising sign. The fact that they still can't decide why Shane McMahon's in charge of Raw is a little interesting, but at this point, who cares that the storyline doesn't make sense as long as we're getting Raws that are worth watching? I just wish, you know what, if there was ever a time where I wish WWE would just drop the storyline and just, okay, this is the way it is now, this would be the thing. Stop trying to explain why Shane McMahon is in charge of Raw. Shane McMahon is just in charge of Raw now. Vince McMahon went off on sabbatical. Nobody can find the authority. Shane McMahon has just assumed control because he's the only one left. And then you just move on from there, and eventually somebody comes back and tries to fight with Shane. But until then, you don't have to explain yourself every week and say that Shane McMahon won a social media poll to remain in charge, because that makes even less sense. Sorry, my chair is making a lot of noise today. If that was my only complaint about the shows lately, is the fact that Shane McMahon isn't supposed to be in charge and they aren't explaining it well. But like I said, I'll accept it because the shows are good. I mean, they're not 100% great. There's not, it's not up and down great all the ways, but it's a lot better than what we were getting for the last few months. If you're complaining, I don't want to say if you're complaining about Raw, you just can't be satisfied, because there's stuff to complain about. There's always going to be stuff to complain about. Ric Flair is still interfering in Charlotte's matches. The Social Outcasts are jobbers, and Bray Wyatt's injured again. Those are but okay, that last one's out of their control. But there are, the complaints seem minor because there's things that seem to be going in the right direction, and the stuff that's happening is interesting. We all wish the shows were 2 hours long again, and we all wish that we were getting everything we wanted right now, this instant. But can you imagine the stuff that will happen at Payback or the Raw after Payback if whatever they're planning with Bullet Club actually pays off? Like, I sat there and I was talking last week about, before we knew about what was going on with Baylor, I sat there and go, if Anderson and Gallows turn on AJ Styles and align with Roman Reigns, you would have the hottest heel faction and the most sympathetic babyface in WWE we've seen since Daniel Bryan. They would start writing checks and printing money and promoting. They'd probably be able to promote the biggest SummerSlam ever based on that feud alone, supplemented by an undercard feud with all those guys who are doing really good stuff. And while that is still a possibility and may still happen, I don't know. I don't have any sources. Just to sit there and think that that's a possibility now, because at WrestleMania we were at a low point. Make no mistake, for everyone who's defending WrestleMania, it was still a low point for this year. It was not the worst WrestleMania of all time. It wasn't a good WrestleMania. And we sat there after the show, and I know I sat there after the show saying, where the hell does all this crap go? And now we're here 3 weeks later, and I think we can agree that the crap is going in a way that a lot of us should be happy about. Yeah, it sucks that Zack Ryder has to go back to being a hype bro. But you can't take the WrestleMania moment away from him. And frankly, that was more than anyone ever expected for Zack Ryder. What, like, we're going to complain about the fact that Zack Ryder got a one-day Intercontinental title reign when everybody thought that he was going to be, like, number 7 on the list of guys in that match who mattered. Especially when it puts into his place where we get Miz and Maurice, the Hollywood power couple, and Cesaro, the James Bond like super stud who everybody loves. Yeah, like it'd be great if Cesaro was in the main event picture, but do you see a spot for him right now? Isn't this a much better use of our time? It's hard not to be positive right now. For all the shit that's going on and for all the stuff that we're still worried because Roman Reigns is still the world champion, at least they're running with it and they're working with it and they're not pretending he's not getting booed. Although I really like, even if it's a heel tactic, the fact that he must repeat his entire catchphrase every time is going to make you want to change the channel or mute it, and that's not the right reaction. The attitude is correct. The repetition is bad. It's something that WWE does not seem to get. Is that, once is clever, twice is annoying, 3 times is pissing me off. And not in the way that you want them to. In the way that I would rather not watch this. And I'll give him all the props. Things are going well for him if the intention is for him to be disliked and not care about it, then things are going well. But at the same time, the catchphrase is still too long for a t-shirt. And it's not a catchy one. Like, it was clever the first time because it was something we hadn't heard him say, and it was an acknowledgement of the things that we wanted to acknowledge. But now it's just a droning on catchphrase that takes a long time to say, and we're over that. If he wanted to, cut it down to I'm the man or I'm the guy, I think people would be a lot more okay with it. As long as, it's the attitude that's important, not the fact that he repeats the same catchphrase every time he comes out. I realize this is coming from someone who loves to watch Enzo Amore say the same catchphrase every time, but that has a little more crowd participation and it isn't just annoying. It's fun. And it's catchy, and Roman Reigns is labored. And part of it is his delivery, and part of it is the fact that it is way too long for the purpose that they're using it. Maybe it's just me, although I know it isn't. But it needs to be cut down. Especially since he's clearly, like, when you say I'm not a good guy and I'm not a bad guy, I'm the guy, clearly you're a bad guy. Because bad guys don't have to say, or because good guys don't have to say stuff like that. And cool guys who are the guy don't have to say their whole catchphrase every time either. But of course, it's WWE, and you say everything a million times because the idiots in the crowd might not get it the first time, and eventually it makes its way into video packages and t-shirts, and Michael Cole says it every 5 seconds, and finally it's just kind of a thing. And it just isn't a thing now, and it probably won't be a thing ever, but they're going to have to work something out. So yeah, that went off on a tangent, but that was okay. What else do we have to talk about this week? I could have sworn we had more news than those 2 big items, but they were 2 fairly large items. We had Lucha Underground this week, of course, was very good, and I finally caught back up. I found a source. Sorry. Apparently there was an injury during the season 3 tapings of Lucha Underground, which is interesting, but I won't spoil that away. There's the thing about TNA. Right. That was the other thing. TNA apparently may or may not be for sale, already have been sold, is definitely being financially supplemented by someone. Has no money, will never have money, should probably just be let go at this point. Like when I read all the stuff about, like, if it's true, if there's some financial firm making the payments for TNA in exchange for controlling, I have to ask what you're trying to purchase. Because the show has a time slot on a former TV Guide channel that, while it does have the reach of millions and millions of homes, is for a brand that is so tainted that nobody watches it. The only value in the company at this point is a couple young superstars who were already let go by WWE, and a tape library. And the only people who would have the money to buy the tape library is WWE. So that's the only way you'd recoup that cost. The company is not going to make money and has never made money. And at this point, the roster is like 15 guys deep, and it's hemorrhaged all its best talent, except for, I think I could name it on one hand, is gone. Many of them are in WWE now. Some of them aren't because they weren't very good in the first place. But they've hit a point where they're definitely not the number 2 promotion in North America. There may not be number 3 at this point. They are just another indie federation that doesn't make money. And it sounds harsh, but that's the whole point, is to make money. And at this point, you might as well just call it Omega South, because it's the Matt and Jeff Hardy show with a couple other guys. It's possibly at this point, it's not so much that they should just let it die, it's that it is dead, and nobody seems to be willing to let the corpse rest. And I'm being harsh. I really am. There were times, and there were plenty of times in the past, however long TNA has been around, where there were signs that, like, it could be a true alternative. But it's not anymore. It's a minor league franchise with a small roster full of decent wrestlers and a couple bad ones that is no better than the one you might see in your local indie federation. They happen to have a TV channel that seems to appreciate free programming, I guess. But other than that, what are their assets? Their assets are in not existing so that WWE can air highlights of them in Sting career DVDs. It's sad but true. And while it is nice to see guys like Ethan Carter and Drew Galloway and is there even anybody else? It's nice to see them at least seem like big deals somewhere, because I always felt they missed the boat. Not on Ethan Carter so much, but I always felt they missed the boat on Drew. It's nice to see them do something somewhere. Or at least it would be, except I can't watch TNA because we don't get Pop TV in Canada. And I wouldn't watch it even if we did, because it seems like the lamest low-budget show possible. And I'd only have so much time. God, the fact that SmackDown is getting better is going to be a real problem for me, because I don't have time to add another 2 hours of wrestling content to my week. Although that may become my job. I don't know. If they do a brand split, I'm gonna have to hire an assistant or something. Except I don't have that power. Or I'm going to have to teach some of the women at work to like wrestling or something. I don't know. That would be hard as well. First, I would have to teach them a lot of other pop culture things that they don't pay attention to. I'm not being mean. That's just not their job, so they don't pay attention. What was the question I was asked this week? I can't remember. Anyway. Where was I? Anyway, TNA dead. Just not It's dead like the zombies on The Walking Dead in that it's dead but not really. Also, the Fear the Walking Dead show, which should be dead because it's terrible. I will not apologize for that. Fear the Walking Dead remains a bad show, and I have stopped watching it. I gave it if the premiere of a season can't get you to excited enough to continue watching the show, then it's a bad show, and that's what it was for me. But on the bright side, Game of Thrones is back in less than 24 hours, and aren't we thrilled about that? Actually, I'm not sure. I don't know. What are we going to do? There's no source material. I am off on a tangent, and I don't care because it's Game of Thrones, and you all care about Game of Thrones, right? I am really worried about the lack of source material for Season 6, and I will say it right here. I wish there was a book. For many reasons, but mostly because I would like to read the book, but also because I am worried about Season 6 without source material, because Season 5 was odd enough with enough source material to cover it. It went on weird places that I don't understand and didn't particularly like, and I get that makes me one of those guys who complains about shit like that because it's not like the book, and I don't care, because the books are really good, on average. And the show, last season, was forgettable. And I don't want this book series that I really like to become one of those shows that ends up going out like a wet fart because they ran out of content. But I guess we'll see. Well, with that, since I've already gone off tangent, I figure we might as well just wrap things up for another week. What else? Did I have anything else? At least the Blue Jays won today. That was good. Gaming wise, it's the same old stuff. I'm still playing World of Warcraft on Argent Dawn. You can find me, Dave the Camel, #1982, if you want to play. I don't know why I can't get back. I can't go. Actually, I do know why, because it's nice when you're watching a baseball game for 3 hours to have something to do with your hands. And I can basically play World of Warcraft in my sleep at this point, so that's why I play a mage, so I don't have to pay attention. Shh! Don't tell the tanks. Other than that, I'm waiting for some games to come out. I mean, we've got Uncharted's got to get here eventually, right? But yeah, other than that, next week we'll be back with a preview of Payback, and maybe we'll know some more by then, although I bet we won't. I bet Finn won't be on Raw this week. I'd be happy to lose that bet, but I'm still going to make it. So yeah, next week we'll talk about Payback, which is not tomorrow, but the Sunday after that. Anything else that happens? Hopefully not another rash of people dying, because damn, that's depressing. You have no idea. Like had to write a whole bunch about Chyna's death that morning, and I come back from lunch and Prince died. God damn it! Somebody else is covering the second death of the day. This is literally what I said, and again, I know I'm being harsh and callous and all those bad words, but sometimes you have to separate yourself from it a little. Other than that, I think we're done. Of course, don't forget to follow us on Facebook at the Facebook group TWNE After Dark. You can follow me on Twitter at Dave the Camel. You can follow my day job, Goliath.com, men's entertainment website. You can get this podcast on forummedia.com, Spreaker.com, iTunes, Stitcher, and on the Wrestling to the Max network. We will see you next week. Thanks to everyone for listening. Keep an eye out for messages about when this podcast goes live, but it's usually Saturdays at midnight or thereabouts. All right, we'll see you next week. Have a good one. Always be a fan.